This is Marina Budos. Do you like her? Say hi. Marina's going to be our guest host for tonight's Pen Parentis Literary Salon, capturing the story before it is lost. It is the fall season, and we are ridiculously excited. Now, watch me read this extremely long introduction of Marina's amazing work. Marina Budos.
No.
I am. I'm going to read it all, and it's going to be awesome.
Oh, no.
And you know what people are going to do while they're here? They're going to type in the chat, "Hi, Marina," so that we know that there are people out there, because as you all know out there in viewer land, that we don't know you're here unless you tell us you're here. So you have to actually put your name on the thing, log into YouTube or Facebook or whatever you're watching on, and just say, "Hi, I'm from this city, state, and I'm watching you." And that makes us so happy. But here, let us tell you about Marina Budos. She is the author of several books for young adults and young adults and adults, both young and old. Her newest novel, We Are All We Have, was a Best Kirkus book of 2022. Among her prior books are Watched, which received a Walter Award and an Asian Pacific American honor, The Long Ride, Tell Us We Are Home, and Ask Me No Questions, which obviously all these books probably were recipients of numerous honors. She has also published the adult novels, The Professor of Light and The House of Waiting, and 3 works of nonfiction, including co-authored books with her husband, which have been LA Times book finalists and other she's award-winning. She could put award-winning guest host, and that would work too. And her books have been published in several countries. Her short work has appeared in a bazillion publications. She got an NEA fellowship, a Rona Jaffe Award for Women Writers, 3 fellowships from the New Jersey Council on the Arts. She's been a Fulbright Scholar to India. Are you all getting excited? Why are you not saying, "Oh my God, hi, Marina," in the comments? Because I don't even know that you're watching. So let's do this. Oh, see? Hi, Ellen Stearns. Hey, Ellen Stearns is our fellow. Hi, Ellen. We're so glad that you checked in with us. And she is a professor emerita from William Patterson University and frequently gives talks. We are very honored to have her serving on our board and for stepping in for our usual curator, Pen Parentis, Christina Chu, who is kind of synonymous with Pen Parentis. I mean, to be fair. So this is going to be capturing the story before it is lost. And Marina, hi.
Hi. So a couple of things I want to say, some housekeeping things here about we are sponsored today, right? And I just want to make sure that we've got our sponsor here. So thank you to our sponsors, which is the Poetry Foundation, the New York State Council on the Arts, the DeGroote Foundation, and September's sponsor is Scribinete Maternum.
And I'm going to correct your pronunciation now. Scribente maternum. It is Latin writing mother. It is a really cool community of moms who write. And they also have these amazing retreats, which are, they host sessions on craft, and they build community for every writer who identifies as a mom. Let's bring up our people. We want to meet our people.
Yes.
And also, hi, Alexander. Thank you for saying hi. Hi, Karaoke Mary from Asheville, North Carolina. We are very, very happy that you can now.
And as they come on, I'm just going to give you a quick précis of who we've got here, but you'll hear more about them. We're going to have Nicole Cooley, who grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana. She's published 7 collections of poetry. She's received the Walt Whitman Award from the Academy of American Poets and NEA. She's a professor in the MFA program in creative writing and literary translation at Queens College, City University of New York. We also have Jessica Manack, who holds degrees from Hollins University. She lives in Pittsburgh, which we're hoping to hear about. She's a development editor for Belt Magazine and a poetry reader for Tri-Quarterly. And her poetry collection is Gastromythology. Catherine Textier was born and raised in France. She has written 6 novels, and her memoir Breakup was an international bestseller. Her literary awards include an NEA, National Endowment for the Arts Award, and she's written for the New York Times Magazine, and many other places.
We are so
welcome everybody
to have all of you, and we're excited to know that people are watching from LA and from Larchmont, from Westchester. So we know that people are watching us from all over the world, from at least all over the country tonight, and that's cool. So what we do, as you know, here is we present writers who have children. So all of these spectacular writers, including my guest hosts here and me, we all have awards, we all have books, we all did it all, even though we have kids. Or yay, we also have kids. Like, and we're going to talk about it with you. And you are very welcome to send in your comments if you are watching live. And if this is a playback, keep running. I'm sure you're going to make it. It's going to be great. Anyway, let's go one at a time and see who our readers are and have them read to us a little bit so we can get to know them.
Okay, so I'm going to begin with Nicole was going to be our first reader. I want to introduce her in a couple of ways. One, I mentioned that she's from New Orleans. Her most recent book is Mother, Water, Ash, and she has 2 poetry collections, Girl After Girl After Girl, and Of Marriage. Her other books include Breach, Milk Dress, The Afflicted Girls, and Resurrection, as well as a novel, 2 chapbooks, books, and a collaborative artist books. I mentioned her various awards. Another one that we might include is a Discovery Nation award, a Dickinson Award from the Poetry Society, and on and on. But I wanted to introduce Nicole in one very quick way, which is Nicole and I was a graduate student. She was an undergraduate student. We both served on the literary magazine, had not seen each other for decades. And it was at a Pen Parentis gathering a couple of years ago that I looked over and saw her, and we were at AWP, and I said, "Are you Nicole?" And the truth is, Nicole and I have been living parallel lives as mothers and writers and professors in New Jersey. So we didn't get to kind of have each other during the crucial years, but now she's my walking and talking buddy.
So awesome. See what Pen Parentis can do for you. Reunite you with your long lost literary loves. It's so good. Nicole is going to read for us. What are you going to read for us, Nicole?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me here. And it was so wonderful and fortuitous to rediscover Marina at the Pen Parentis event. It was kind of magical. And I'm so happy to be here to read for this organization that reintroduced us. I'm going to read a poem from my book. I'm holding it up, show and tell. My book that came out last year, Mother, Water, Ash, from Louisiana State University Press. And I'm going to read the first poem in the book. The book is about my mother's sudden death in 2018, but it's also about the Louisiana coast where I grew up. And my mother, in my mind, I realized after she died, is very linked up to that disappearing coastline. And in part, I'm also reading this poem because the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, August 29th, just passed. And I want to mark that moment as well because my parents didn't evacuate during the storm. And through random good luck, they were okay. But after that storm, my mother was wedded to New Orleans in a really new way. So also a lot of what this book is about being a mother and losing my mother, because my mother was very close to my daughters. So that'll come up too. But I think the only thing you really need to know about the poem is that I grew up 2 blocks from the Mississippi River. And I feel like it's really formed my consciousness. So here's the poem. On the Mississippi River levee, styrofoam cup in my hand that will disintegrate in 500 years. I drink my coffee, stand in gravel in my church skirt, black velvet I wore to my mother's funeral 11 days ago. Take a photo of my own shadow on the railroad tracks to text to my daughters. While this river outside my parents' house is rising higher than in years. Spillways opened, live oaks sunk in mud, grass littered with plastic bags and beer cans. Levee trash, a photo essay, my former self might think. That self so well versed in irony, that careful daughter who would take notes, then shut her notebook. Now on the levee, a white truck speeds by too fast. Maybe a man who picks up shifts on rigs for extra money. And in a former life, I'd write a poem about how that man might be dangerous to my daughters. Now I write nothing. I'm here to walk off my restless sadness, to walk off my mother's voice years ago after the storm when the city flooded, telling me she will never leave New Orleans, no matter how high water rises or how many times levees breach, telling me she will die in her house. No evacuations, no hospitals. Now I know grief has its own typography, Mine is this city and this coast. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Nicole, another thing we share is she grew up in New Orleans, and my son went to school in New Orleans at the university where her father taught. Sadly, he couldn't take a course with him. But I'm so struck by the fact that I keep thinking about, if we think about the theme of tonight, that you're trying to capture these sort of disappearing stories. There's sort of the disappearing story of the landscape. There's the disappearing story of your mother, but there's also seems to be this disappearing self, like a different self that you're both noting but leaving behind. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I love the way you just phrased that, Marina. So the book is very much about the disappearing coast, and I've done a lot of research on the disappearing coast. It was sparked by a high school class I took on the Louisiana environmental crisis, which was very bad in the 80s and is God knows much worse now. But I've kept up with all the research on it, and it's quite fascinating. I mean, the rate at which the coast is disappearing and the wetlands are disappearing. And I think there's the disappearing landscape, the disappearing mother, because my mother died really suddenly, so there was no goodbye. And then I think there's also one thing that the book is grappling with is this idea of, are you a mother? Are you daughter? What happens when you don't have a mother anymore? And maybe then you need to stop being a daughter, but then you have these daughters who you need to mother. And so I don't know. So it's sort of the constellation of like the mother-daughter self that I feel like is really kind of at the emotional center of the book.
That's gorgeous. I am so excited to continue to talk about this.
We're going to loop back around to you because this is such rich territory.
So deep.
So we are moving on to Jessica to hear from you now. I'm going to give a sort of fuller portrait of Jessica, who, as I mentioned, holds degrees from Hollins University and lives with her family in Pittsburgh. She's developmental editor for Belt Magazine, poetry reading for Tri-Quarterly. Her writing has appeared widely in anthologies and journals, including Still, the Journal, Swim, Every Day, and The Drift, and her poetry collection, Gastromythology, was published in 2024 by Sheila Na Gig Editions. So, Jessica, take it away.
Hi, thank you so much for that introduction, and to Pen Parentis in general. I released my first book in middle age last year, and it's been so great to be able to hold it in my hands. I feel like all of this momentum started happening when I found Pen Parentis 3.5 years ago, and my accountability group, Laura's group, is really the reason that I'm able to keep hitting those milestones. So I worked for a long time in a cubicle in a very corporate environment and felt like I would never be able to break myself away from that enough to really get a collection together. It did happen. I'm going to read 2 short poems, and you can see sort of how that time of my life is reflected in here. I thought so much about time and the ways that we spend our time. Being a parent really gave me the perspective, I think, to want to get a collection together. So a lot of my poems are about being a mother as well. The man from the Bluebird Club gives a lunchtime presentation over chicken salad sandwiches. His topic, the preservation of the habitat of the eastern bluebird, a protected species. Our employer gives us a break from our cubicles to show their support of wildlife. If we can make a place for nesting, maybe everyone will forget about the chemicals. Outside our window, the accountants play cornhole, tallying and bellowing. The man explains that the house sparrow is not from here, but introduced and invasive. They displace the native bluebirds, prevent them from thriving. He explains how to catch them in a burlap sack, snap their necks, ensure quick deaths, do our part. I went to this talk because I loved birds, not because I feel capable of murdering them. I want to say, come sparrows, I'll feed you, native or not. I know about thriving without belonging. And then this is a sonnet that I wrote for my daughter. I spend so much time in the mother's room at work pumping milk. And as odious a task as that can be, it really, I found the time so meditative in a bizarre way. Breastfeeding at 40. It might be sour what I have to give. This drink too full of all I can't unknow. Though you no longer need my heat to live, you hold me down and make the time go slow. Time, what is time? How rich I used to be. The hours that I spent on girlish arts. I taste of time, a wise old rind of cheese, made tender by the beatings of my heart. You help, though gravity needs none from you, to pull my flesh more quickly to the earth. Your grandmother, I'm frequently assumed. I tried to see my wealth and not my dearth. It's easiest to let the mammal win, to put one life away, the next begin. Thank you.
I like to let the mammal win.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's just so much about that time of early motherhood and parenthood where so many different things are happening to your body, you know.
That's true. That the same. Sorry, you can go on a minute, but I just
No.
want that idea of like being a mom and an animal at the same right is that same duality that Nicole was talking about with being a mom and a daughter, but being like a thinking person who's intelligent and an animal that has no idea and just following instinct and
Yeah.
right.
And then mixing that up with a super corporate, like now I have to go to a meeting with the CEO after this and pretend none of this just happened. You know, it was a trip mentally.
Amazing. Go ahead, Marina.
Well, what I was going to say is what's so interesting about, particularly your second poem, is that you ask about, what is time, right? And so if we think about sort of the story that got away, this you seem to be working on letting us sit in that time of that moment of early motherhood, which for you was squeezed between your job and just lingering in this moment of breastfeeding. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, about time, the role of time.
Yeah. I mean, having children shook up my life in the best way, I think, because it just forces you to reevaluate everything that you knew, right? I mean, it's not about productivity. It's not about how long it takes you to pump that bottle of milk. I mean, the goals are just so different. And I really relished that because I was in that kind of cycle where, you're working, you're on a career trajectory, you know what you need to do, your deliverables. And, it's like the whole goalposts have just totally changed. But I think having kids maybe on the later side also, I think really kicked my writing into high gear because I felt that perspective of my lived experience, my ancestors, which is part of the book as well. And thinking I want to tell my children about their place in the timeline and what came before them and what I want them to know. Gastromythology is an interesting concept to me because so much of what was passed down to me from my ancestors were maybe recipes or shared meals. And I did a lot of research on genealogy and my history and found these stories that for whatever reason were never passed down. So thinking about what we are choosing to give our children in terms of their personal lore is another theme of my book.
Amazing. And I know that you're very also involved with Appalachia in a way. Can you talk just a bit about that before we move on to the third reader?
Yeah, sure. So there is a really thriving literary community in Appalachia, which I am in the northern part of. People sometimes break it into northern or southern Appalachia, but I found that when I maybe adjusted my writing goals to, when you're in grad school, you want to send your work to the Paris Review, to the New Yorker, and all of these huge, very notable outlets. But I found that when I am going to conferences and workshops and meeting people who are editors who are helping me develop my body of work and then maybe giving me an outlet to publish that work. And it's part of this ecosystem that has been so welcoming and nurturing. And I think it's because maybe in Appalachia, there's a commonality that we all do feel this importance of story and history, and that's a thread, whether you're a weaver or a singer or a literary artist, that it's embedded into everything you do.
Yeah, the arts are so, like, culture and arts are so intertwined, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the arts they're somehow, the fine arts are maybe all of the global humanity culture, but then the culture is like the culture of this specific is so fascinating and interesting and allegorical to the culture of the globe. Anyway, on that note, let's move on to Catherine, because she's really global.
Yes, very much, very much. Catherine Textier was born and raised in France, as mentioned, has traveled extensively in South America and lived in Montreal before making her way to the US. She started to write in English when she moved to New York after publishing her first novel, Chloé Lintique, in French. Since then, she has written 5 more novels: Love Me Tender, Panic Blood, Victorine, Young Woman with a Bunch of Lilac, forthcoming in Italy, and Russian Lessons. Her memoir, Breakup, was an international bestseller. Victorine won Elle Magazine's 2004 Reader's Prize Best Novel of the Year. Lovely Tender was a Village Voice bestseller in 1987. Her work has been translated into 10 languages, so global true indeed. She's received a National Endowment for the Arts Award, 2 New York Foundation for the Arts fellowships. Her short fiction and essays have been widely anthologized. And she was also the co-editor with Joel Rose of the literary magazine, which I remember, Between C and D, and has written for numerous magazines. She's also a translator from the French of The Death Instinct by Jacques Mesrine, The Rap Factor and Alba, both by Delacorte, and she updated the French translation of Grace Paley's collected short stories. She has taught in many, many places. I'll just name a few: Rutgers, Columbia, Brooklyn College, the New School, Paris Writers Workshops. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you so much.
She also runs an amazing literary salon in New York City. If you get a chance to go there, a lot of our Pen Parentis people have read there. It's great. Me too. It's so good.
You too, absolutely.
It's the coolest place. Anyway, go on.
Well, thank you so much to Pen Parentis for inviting me to read tonight. So I'm actually going to read something that's unpublished.
Oh, yay.
Which is, I thought, because I'm working on a memoir about my mother, which I'm hoping to finish by the end of the year. So I thought that would be, appropriate for tonight. And I'm going to read just a few pages from the beginning.
Great.
So, yeah. 6:30 a.m. The voice of the phone on the phone is French with a slight southern lilt. A man I don't know. It's about your mother. I sit up in bed, my hands soaked with sweat. Woken up by the phone, Lola pushes my door open, looking alarmed. My mother's just flown back to Provence from Helsinki. For the first time ever this year, she felt too tired to drive to Finland, where she spends her winters in a log cabin by a lake. She's staying in her van in the village campground, waiting for the people who are renting her house to leave in a couple of weeks. She's in the hospital, the voice goes on. She had a cerebral hemorrhage. What? Who are you? I'm the one who called the SAMU. I think you'd better come. SAMU is an acronym for Service d'Aide Médicale Urgente. It's an ambulance. Vertigo. Something spiraling, engulfing me. What's wrong, Mommy? Lola asked, stiff by the door. It's Nanny. She's sick. I have to go to France. You will stay with your dad. I'll come back in a few days, I promise. My Uncle Francois is waiting for me in the lobby of the hospital. I've driven straight from the Nice airport in a little rental Renault, holding my breath the whole way. I'm dizzy with jet lag. In the waiting room of the ICU, we change into pale blue gowns, masks, gloves, and pale blue paper slippers over our shoes. When we walk into the room, I first see my mother's profile facing the window, like a flower leaning toward the light. The other side is collapsed, a landslide. Her mouth hangs half open. My heart splits apart. C'est moi, maman. A vague smile. At least she recognizes me. On her good side, her face still beautiful, her skin creased like exquisitely fine tissue paper, her eyes unfocused. looking her age, 85 for the first time ever. Ça va bien maintenant. I just had nausea. Now I'm fine. Her voice, a thin filler of sound I don't recognize, repeating, Ça va bien maintenant, to reassure me and herself. Her bad hand lies dead on the white sheet. Her good one pulses into mine like a tiny bird. She had a heart attack 13 years ago and sailed through it, but not this time. When we convene later in the hotel restaurant where he had booked us rooms, my uncle tells me this story. He had once gone to the local garage to check if my mother's van was ready. Ah, you coming for the gypsy's van? The garage owner asked. My uncle thinks it's funny. The gypsy, La Gitane. That's the name of the French cigarettes in the blue pack, with the blue gypsy dancing away in smoke. My grandfather used to smoke Gitane papier maïs, the ones wrapped in yellow paper. My mother doesn't smoke Gitane, but Besson and Hedges or Craven A. The smoke of blonde tobacco mixes with that of her tea and her perfume, Madame Rochas, wearing one of her long caftans she's been sporting lately, like a hippie. I've offered her one in Indian cotton, a floral print in deep purples. The robe billows around her. She's always naked underneath in summer, to feel freer. The gypsy sleeping in her van, carrying her bulging plastic bags, traveling the world. La Gitane. My uncle chuckles. I don't look at him. The old shame explodes like brush fire in my chest. I drove to the campground when she was staying when she felt sick. The man who scolds the SAMU and who called me afterwards in New York is the camp manager, Manix. He's a handsome man, tall, thin, with fine features and blue eyes. I register all those details. I wonder if she's been attracted to him. He shows me to her spot, to her camping car. It's a white Volkswagen van she bought new, fully equipped with a fridge, a bed, a foldable table, when my grandmother died more than 10 years ago, with much trepidation because she didn't think she deserved such luxury, not after rebelling against my grandparents' money. It was her dream, that van, but she felt it was too bourgeois for her, who was used to secondhand deux chevaux hatchbacks that she fixed up. To me, it looks like a beached whale, stranded among the pine trees. My heart turns into a fist. The old shame that my mother would prefer to wander the world in a camping car rather than live the life of a traditional wife with husband and children and grandchildren. And at the same time, a monstrous protective love for the little girl that she still is, who loves to get lost in the woods, play tea party in her little house on wheels or in her wood cabin in Finland, where I've never been, but I imagine so well from the pictures. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Very powerful.
Evocative. Wow. So fun.
Ah,
So I want to know. Okay, I have a
So-
question.
yeah.
Can I ask? I have a question because you're an international bestseller. I want to know the worst and best thing about being an international bestseller, and you
Well,
can
when
go
you-
in either order.
Yeah, no, it's just because I had to get to travel to other countries. So that's, I mean, for breakup, it was a treat. I mean, really, that's really the best.
And what was the worst?
Well, it was a memoir. It was about the breakup of my marriage with my husband, and he was very angry. He told me I ruined his life, things like that. I mean, he moved past it. He had left me for someone else. We did.
Oh,
we
so
were-
like who ruined whose life?
yeah, but I mean, there were moments that were like they were hard like that. You
Yeah,
know.
sure. Okay, cool.
my question for you, Catherine, because I have read your memoir and I gulped it down, I must say, and it has a sense of urgency to it, where I actually felt like you were trying to capture
Yeah,
the story that it was about to get away, right?
absolutely.
The marriage.
Yes.
And so now I'm thinking about what you just read, which has some of the same element. There is a kind of urgency here. I don't know if this is the opening, but obviously
It
it's
is the
this
opening, yeah,
way.
for right now. Anyway.
Okay, yeah. So I'm thinking about this role of memoir and trying to capture something, that could slide from you in memory very quickly, and holding on to the urgency of that moment. And I was wondering if you could talk about that with respect to your process.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I think anything we write, it is, I mean, at least for me, it is trying to capture the moment, because otherwise it's lost, and that feeling that you have when it's happening, it will be lost. There are people who talk about, writers who talk about, oh, you have to wait to be able to write, because when it settles down, then you look at it in a different way. And it's true as well. But in the moment, I mean, this piece, this opening I wrote a while back when my mother has been dead now almost like more than 20 years, actually. But I wrote it much closer to that time. Now the whole book becomes, there is more distance, etc. But these details, you will forget them, you will lose them. And that's what life is all about, really. It is, I mean, as an artist or as a writer, is to bear witness to the moment, and the moment has to contain all these little details that will go away if we don't capture them right away.
That is a beautiful transition to our discussion for what we are talking about today, which is capturing the story before it is lost. Let's rearrange everybody and let's get talking. Also, if you're in the audience, as you know, if you type in your chat a question, we will see it. And we have seen that Helene has joined us, and we've been watching. Mary really liked your readings, and so we are watching the chat, just so you know. So anyway, let's talk about this, capturing the story. What connected you to that topic when you were choosing the salon that you were going to be reading at? What about this topic was evocative to you? What does it make you feel now? Anything you want, jump in, and I'd love to hear from you.
I mean, I'll start. I feel like capturing the story is like everything I think about all day long in my writing and my teaching. And I have two daughters, Meridian and Arcadia. They're now 21 and 24. So there's that, capturing that story is always on my mind too, like the early days of motherhood, which, like Jessica, when you were talking about the breast pumping and all that, really brought it back. So I'm always thinking of capturing the story as my daughters grow up and as, parents age and die. And it just feels like that's what writing really does, right? Like that's what it does, like getting it down. And I think a lot about, so I'm a very regimented person in my life in general. Like I have a tight schedule for every day, but writing is the one place in my life I let myself be really messy. And that's something that I came to after having children. I didn't used to be like that. But when I had my daughters, I realized that like having a full-time job, which takes place 2 hours from my house, and having two kids, it was not going to fly waiting for inspiration and having a beautiful pen. So I just became super messy with my writing. And the joke was that New Jersey Transit was my writing studio, and I would just record everything on the train. And I would just write on receipts and construction paper, and I would just fill giant folders. And I would never say like, I'm writing a poem. I would be just like, I'm writing. So it'd just be junk. And somehow that became this really freeing way to write. And writing became more enjoyable. It became something I could do at any moment. I lowered my standards. And I have to say, this really was all about like having a job and having kids. And I've kept that up. And I was just talking last night to my class about this process. And I think it can be very freeing. So I'm just going to get the story down. I'm going to remember things. I'm just going to bear witness. I'm just going to write. And if it doesn't turn into anything, if the worst thing I've done all day is write a bad poem, I'm having a great day.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. That, and I, part of what I feel like you're also saying is it's sort of accepting that the story isn't some coherent story that's getting away, but rather it's the scraps as it comes to you, and you just accept that.
Let me show you what Mary said. My daughter is 3. I feel like I'm still trying to figure out who I am now, and I've found writing helps me to process this experience. I'm curious, is writing therapy for you all? Catherine, is that why you're writing this memoir? Is it therapy, or what? Well,
I think, yeah, of course, we always use I've used writing as therapy, but usually it's bad writing. But it doesn't mean that it's not part of the process. And then you have to sort of clean it up and then get to that place which tells a story. I mean, for me, I'm not a poet, I'm a fiction writer or a memoir. I feel that as a memoirist, I also tell a story. So, but it is definitely, like, for instance, because even though I started that first scene I wrote it very quickly after my mother passed away. I'm continuing writing this memoir. It's not quite finished yet, and it's so. the therapy is not in the writing, but it's in realizing with the distance what was not working out in my childhood, and why did I have to go all the way to the other side of the Atlantic to find a place for myself far away so that I would find space for myself. And that's something that certain issues about my mother are coming up now only because I'm writing certain scenes. I also interviewed one of my uncle before he passed away, what was his view of, because I was raised by my grandparents with difficult family history. And then it's now I could see even like from yesterday or tomorrow, I'm figuring out certain thing in terms of that relationship.
Right. And then you grab all of these pieces of paper, Nicole, or these ideas, Catherine, and then you shape them into something.
Yes, then you start to shape them.
Like good. Jessica, what do you have to say about this?
Yeah, I think I can add a lot there. And I see there's a new question too. Do you write a lot of notes before you write a story or poem? And I think one of the biggest benefits, one of the biggest tools that I started using for my writing is putting the Google Docs app on my phone. And I just started a really messy, doc of all my ideas. You're waiting in line at the post office and you want to make sure that you don't lose that line. And so you get it down. And also to go to Mary's point, I think writing can be therapeutic in that what motivates me to write are usually things that I'm trying to work out or conflicts. I'm not the person that's sitting there writing about a beautiful cloud. I think my writing comes from those pain points that I'm trying to make sense of. And I also have found that I am not confining myself to one genre. I do write a lot of poetry. I've also written and published some creative nonfiction. I think one of the most formative things that happened to me was on my second maternity leave. For my birthday, my husband bought me an online course for one of creative nonfiction's asynchronous flash creative nonfiction class. And at first I was like, I have a baby to take care of. I can't do this. But then I thought, what if I just try? I mean, if I fail, I fail, whatever. And just having that writing practice worked into my day was so, I surprised myself by realizing that I could do it. And I am envious of people who are able to journal in a very regimented way. I love when I read books. The book Educated, for example, is a book that she draws so heavily from journals that she kept through her whole life. And I think that is a great tool. But I'm also like Nicole, that all my writing just is writing. I might sit down to write a journal and there's a line in it that kicks off a new poem or something. So it just getting the words down. It's
Nicole, do you and Catherine journal? Do you guys journal? Marina, do you journal?
I write something which is, I don't think that it's a journal really, but it is like one page. It's like a little notebook.
Like the artist's way thing, that kind of like.
Yeah, it's like it's this thing. So it's just one page and it's very small. It's just whatever has happened, it's going through my mind. So it's different from a journal, but yeah, it's more like that. Yeah.
Nicole,
Catherine, I think ours are matching.
It's awesome. German brand. It's called Leitner or something. Yeah.
Oh, mine's Moleskine, but I was going to say I used
Moleskine too, but I think yours is a bit bigger.
I think Moleskine should sponsor.
They're very similar.
Moleskine happiness.
It's a different brand, but it's very
hilarious. Nicole, do you journal?
Yeah.
Right on whatever you have.
I write in. So I'm kind of afraid of Moleskine. I just went to a Moleskine sample sale in New York, and I bought all these notebooks, and now I'm afraid to use them because they're way too beautiful.
Too pretty.
I use really crummy notebooks and pens because I just find that I freeze when something's really nice. So I go to Muji, the Japanese.
I love Muji.
And you can get
yes
for no money. And I just bought a bunch of notebooks for my students for no money. And I use a crummy pen, and it's just kind of like, to me, it demystifies the process and it makes my writing less precious.
It reminds me of something that I heard in one of the meetups where somebody called her first draft the vomit draft. She's like, I expect to have to clean this up.
Yeah.
Like I don't expect to save any of it. I just expect to have to clean it up. And it's kind of a very liberating way to just get it all out.
Well, I want to show you my notebook. The notebook, these are the notebooks are for writing.
Clairefontaine.
It's a French brand, Clairefontaine. So it's a different, and that's where I write notes. And characters' ages. When were they born?
Yeah. How do you guys keep track? Oh, do poets maybe don't have to
Geography,
so
you
much,
know, like
right?
I did all these logistics behind
Yes.
that so that they kind of fit.
So they match, so you don't
Yeah.
forget them.
Even,
That's
yeah,
good.
whether it's a memoir or fiction, you still have this, it has to sort of fit.
Yeah. Let's quickly go back to the theme of catching things before they're gone. Do you remember any time when you had little kids? Because one of the things that children do is interrupt. They frequently will come in when you told them, no, don't come in. They show up when you say, no, not, this is not your time. So how did you manage when they were small, like to get time away so that you could actually complete a sentence? You know, obviously you get your ideas down. You have to get them down somehow, however you do. But how did you find the space that you need to do the cleaning up? I see Nicole is excited to talk.
I was thinking about this recently. When my kids were little, I mean, I have a nice attic room at the top of our house, which my kids couldn't get to, which was good when they were little. But I would do this thing, which sounds a little mean, but everybody will get it, which I would lock myself out in the backyard when my husband was with the kids and sit at like this crummy table and just work on my writing. And my daughters would bang on the table, bang on the window. I'm sitting in the room where they would bang. They would bang on the window and I would just be like, I would be out there for 20 minutes. And sometimes my younger daughter would even yell at me, don't go to poetry, don't go to poetry. Window. But it was like this, I don't know, like I kind of loved it. I sat in my crummy backyard at this bad table with my awful notebook, and it was like a very free thing.
You know what it does is it honors the writing. Like it does make the writing actually valuable when your kid doesn't need you. They want you to look at something like that. You know, they obviously if they're, you know, broken leg, you're going to go help them if they actually, but 24/7 is not, that doesn't grow independent humans. And, you know, it's nice that I don't know what kind of kids are they now? They're not such babies anymore. Did that one that was banging on the thing, did she turn out to be like,
oh, she's pretty fierce, but yeah, no, they're both, what's funny is that they both are like huge readers and writers now. You know, so I feel like another thing, it was like a life-changing moment for me when I was driving in the car with my daughters. I forget how old they were, and they were both like looking at books in the back seat. I was like, oh my gosh.
wow. It's like parenting win.
Right. I think about it a lot. Like just being able to share books with them has been really, really wonderful. My older daughter and I read a lot of the same books and talk about them now. And so now it's obviously, it's very different. And I don't even know if they remember that window banging. I have to ask them about it actually.
That's pretty funny.
But
Jessica, you look like you wanted to say something. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. What?
No, I'm thinking back. Well, I'm almost more in the thick of that. So my kids are 7 and 10. And, you know, it's interesting because we're just coming off of the summer and I really didn't get a ton of writing done this summer. But at the same time, I'm glad that I had the flexibility to be with my kids. You know, when I left my corporate job in 2021, so it's been 4 years, and I've been doing part-time work, freelance writing. And, you know, when I look at changing up your life, being able to, you know, go to the pool for the afternoon with the kids has been so important. And that's one of the good things about working too, is that often you get your lunch break. And that's what I had to learn to do is, you know, take your lunch. You could be busy. You could want to work through lunch, but take the lunch. And that's when I started getting back into writing again. When my kids were really small, they were in daycare and I would be working and I had my lunch break. And, you know, you could eat at your desk or you could go to the park and write a poem draft in 30 minutes. And that's what I started making myself do. You really have to, you know, I think apply that discipline and say, there's always more work to do. But there's
always more of everything. Yeah. People are constantly going to give you, I mean, your kid's going to want you more. Your job is going to want you more. Your spouse is probably going to want you more. Like everybody, if you give them your time, they will take it and they will use it up. That's what they do. But also your writing will want your time too. And it's like, and I mean, I had to set alarms. I lived to set alarms. I could not, because I need to get lost in my writing for it to be great. And so when I had a pickup that was going to be at 3:00 and I was sitting down to write at 10:00, I would still set an alarm for 3:00 just in case. And, you know, 99.6% of the time I didn't need it. But that one time where you're really deep in the thick of it and the alarm goes off, you're like, where am I? What is, oh my God, I have to go. And you like go and get your kid, but I did. I really always had to set alarms. My kids still mock me because I cannot make toast without forgetting that it is there. And so I burn the toast all the time. Wait, we have a question from the audience. Are there ways that being a parent helped you recapture lost stories of your own childhood? I think that of how I have remembered childhood rhymes because my kid brings them home from the playground. That's a great question. What do you guys think?
It's such a good question about
good.
and I think that was a
how
little
it
bit,
shifts you.
Nicole, when you were talking earlier about in your poetry, it was both about this particular collection being about being a daughter who has lost a mother, but then having to be a mother. And so sort of what of our own childhood self we recapture. I'm just going to add one thing because I also write for young people. I found that it was a sort of beautiful compliment because I was raising children and writing for young people because I was sort of so in touch with those voices, right? And I was hearing my own, but I was hearing theirs. And so I think that's a really interesting way that, Nicole, I'm curious about that dynamic for you in this collection, at least.
That's so beautiful. I love that. I love what you just said. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I have two daughters and I have a sister. So I like girl world is like what my house was. And while my husband just watches it all unfold. And so there was a lot for me of thinking about my own childhood, my own girlhood, getting really interested in girlhood again, watching my daughters, being incredibly grateful that I didn't have social media when I was a teenager. I think about that a lot.
Infinitely.
Watching my daughters go through the pandemic, which was very hard and difficult. But I feel like I was all along the way, I was thinking a lot about my own life as a young girl and as a young woman, as they were getting older. And that was really interesting. It sort of gave me new access to different stories from my past and different material in ways that I hadn't really considered before.
You have that to look forward to, Jessica. When they start getting to be the age that you can remember yourself at that age, that's where this shift, I think, starts to happen. And wherever that is, like 5, 20, 7. But there's a definite, in my writing, there was a definite point of view, like wah, 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 where suddenly I was identifying with the mom and not the child. When did that happen? It's really interesting. Catherine, did you have
others?
Well, no, I was just thinking it's very different for me because my childhood was so different. Not only because it was in France, but because I was actually raised by my grandparents with a mother who was not really there in a way, and so I had a very, very traditional Catholic, childhood, and I wanted absolutely the opposite for my kids. So, I did not, plus it was in the States. So it was, no, it did not remind me of my own childhood, which I did not really want to remember.
See, that's why I like having more than one voice on these. The reason we always have 3 people is because there's never one way.
No,
like
of course.
all the ways. And it's so interesting.
So interesting.
Yeah.
So interesting. I was thinking there's this other element too when we talk about interruptions, right? And so the ways in which stories can get away because children are always interrupting on some level. And I'm now at the phase, my children are, one's about to be 21, the other's 25. So they're sort of on their way up and out. That I felt like once they were sort of self-sufficient to some extent, I actually needed to write with sort of the hubbub and the sound of their lives around me, that actually that kind of pressure on the other side of the door and that noise wasn't actually it was an interruption. Sometimes I have signs that say, don't interrupt me, but it was also very, I guess because writing is so lonely, I really like the din of family life. I actually write better in the din of family life. I don't want that fully solitude. And so now I'm actually finding myself having to adjust to so much more quiet, so much more adult I'm rediscovering my adult life.
Well, then the pressure
Um,
is the time pressure of like, I only have 15 minutes because that kid is not going to watch Dora the Explorer forever. Like you have, like, you
Yeah.
have to like, okay, let's get it out. Let's get it. I have to be, I found from all of these salons, actually, most of the writers have said that the one thing that changed, and I'm going to ask you, what is the one thing that really changed when you added children to your life while you were a writer? Because you were all writers right before you had children. Am I right?
Yeah.
You weren't, didn't just suddenly start writing after you had kids. Some people do. So what was the biggest significant change that you remember that you had to overcome, and how did you overcome it? Jessica, let's start with you.
I think, as I mentioned in my poem, I just think of all the time that I wasted. I mean, there's this kind of horror, I think, to realize that, just a whole lazy Sunday or something, that you're never going to have that, or just thinking of all the writing I could have been doing before I had kids. I don't know. But I just think it changes your life so much. And to go to Marina's, talk of writing being lonely, I think a really unique aspect of this for me is I don't feel that writing is lonely because a lot of my research and writing has been about my ancestors. One of the first things that I did when I lost my job is I made this huge photo book of all of these photos that I inherited when my grandmother passed away, and she didn't give me any context for them, and I had to do all this research. And so it wasn't literary, but I put this photo book together and wrote the story of all of these people and found 75 cousins who were descended from these people that I was able to send copies to. And I was so relieved to get this information out of my head. I mean, when we talk about capturing the story before they're lost, what I was doing for a long time was calling up my 90-year-old great aunts and asking them what they knew while they were still there for me to ask. And one of the most incredible things I found that's also in my book is I found that my great-great-great-grandfather wrote poetry, which I'd always felt like an outlier in my family because people were not there. I didn't come from a family of readers, weirdly enough. And I found this distant cousin through ancestry.com, and she goes, "Do you have the poems that Joseph Hall wrote?" And I'm like, no poems? Somebody in my family tree was a poet. And so I think what changed for me is really getting that down and to, go back to the previous question about lost stories of your own childhood. I think I just really realized that writing it down is so crucial, even from my kids' childhood. They were 2 and 5 when the pandemic started. And the other day I said something about, that we could only go to the grocery store once a week and we had to place an order. And if you wanted bananas, and you couldn't just go to the grocery store and buy bananas. And like, my kids live that, but they already forgot that. Right. So
Yeah.
I think just realizing we need to capture it. We really do. I mean, oral histories have so much has been passed down that way that there's a great tradition there, but really writing it down for other people to know and learn from is so critical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just to get back to the other theme is that for me, I felt my writing was threatened when my daughter, I mean, they're 10 years apart. And so that, now I had a lot of guilt of not being enough of a mom because I felt sometimes I was putting the writing first. And it did happen more clearly after my divorce, because my younger daughter is 5. And I was alone with her when she was coming back from school. And, I don't have a door. It's like a big study office upstairs here. It's the same place. I haven't moved. But somehow I must have been clear about don't interrupt me, or something.
Yeah.
Because she still says to me now that she's still resentful of the fact that I was not enough present for her.
And it's really interesting because that is just,
Guilty
it was
about it.
absolutely individual to the child. It is not all children will feel this way. It is an individual child.
My other daughter doesn't feel that way. Yeah.
Right. And it's super interesting. Did you guys watch that PBS special on Hemingway when it came out? It's pretty recent. And it's like a 3-day, it was a very big biography event, but he has kids. So I was like, oh, I'll just watch it and see how, everybody says he's like the worst dad ever. And so I thought I'd watch it and see like, what about him was the worst dad ever. Right. Well, they get to the point about like where he's a father and he's living with his wife and his children. And he has a little shed that he writes in.
Yeah, yeah.
And every day he would go into his kid. They asked his kid, so how was your dad as a parent? Like he was a prolific writer. Like, what was he like? And the kid is now 55, 60 years old. He's like 60, 65 years old. He's like, well, let me tell you, it was terrible. He would go into the shed every day from 9 to noon. And we were not allowed in there under penalty of and it was the worst torture and it was terrible. And the interviewer's like, what afterwards was he like mean? He's like, no, he would come out for lunch and then he'd be all like nice and play with us and hang out. But from 9 to noon, every single day, we couldn't talk to him. And I was just like, my mind is blown. Like this, it is any
Although,
other
I
business, you would be gone
I was
from
about
9
to
to 6.
Yes,
or not
exactly.
Because he's
Right, and
That's
they
what
would
I
not be
that's what I
so-
find so interesting. Yes, exactly.
Because I mean, if we were going to
parents
the
work
office,
and
they
go
wouldn't be
away.
resentful.
That's right. But
That's
they
right,
would be.
that's
They
right.
could be. There are kids who are resentful of their mom or their dad who go to work every day. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It is an individual, something was going on in your kid, and that is not your fault for having to work. That's the relieving of guilt that I give to anybody who's watching this, either live or playback, is you're giving your kid everything you can. You love them. That is, you're giving them your love. Even when you're writing, you still love them. You don't stop loving them when you're writing your poetry. And like it is, some kids just are mad that they don't get enough of mom or dad.
Well, yeah, I mean, in my case, it was literally, it was after the divorce. So she found herself all of a sudden
Right.
by her, and probably projected a lot of her anger to me. I mean, let's not go into
Right.
that. But you're right. I mean, that's
They're here. My child resents that I have to go to the bathroom.
right. Exactly.
But and I hope that I hope that your daughter has forgiven you.
No. It's
for
fine.
being
but
a
I mean,
great writer.
yeah.
It's super, super interesting. Anyway, like it's the wildest thing. Oh my God. Okay. This is the end of the hour. Wait, I have to do things.
We are at the end of the
I have
hour.
to do things. I have to do
think Hilda
things.
has some
Yes.
official business to do.
I just wanted to make sure that, again, we thank our sponsors, who are the DeGroat Foundation. They are fantastic for writers. They have an annual thing. They are very stalwart supporters of us, but they're stalwart supporters of all writers. Poets and writers, of course, they are fantastic. If you haven't yet discovered their website, go find it. They have programs. They're wonderful. They have a great magazine. The Poetry Foundation, we have 2 poets on tonight, thanks to them. Poetry Foundation is absolutely giving, lovely foundation. They have the great awards ceremonies and all kinds of good things. And NYSCA, the New York Council on the Arts, is extraordinary in their support of literary artists, either individual or in group, any kind of nonprofit function. NYSCA is a great supporter, and I highly, highly recommend that anybody who has any kind of artistic talent at all and lives in New York State, they should check out the NYSCA website and look at them. And then, of course, our September salon sponsor for this particular salon is Scribente Maternum. They are a community of moms who write. They host retreats. They host sessions on craft to build community for every writer who identifies as a mom. And they have these Write Like a Mother retreats, which you can find on writelikeamother.com. And they have 3 coming up. One is in October in Sedona. One is in April in Sonoma, because that's not confusing. And then in June, they have one in Bordeaux, France, just because they're fancy.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. So I do recommend that you check out all of our sponsors and check out us. We're at penparentis.org. We have meetups that Jessica was in a meetup or is in a meetup, right? You're still in a meetup. She meets every week, and you like it, right, Jessica?
Oh my gosh, they're my best friends. I talk to them more often than most people in my life, to be honest.
Yay. And we also have a National Writer Parent Meetup in which you can reconnect with your old literary friends like Nicole and Marina did. And then we have literary salons that present lovely people like Catherine Textier, who was my workshop instructor when we were both in
Yeah,
St.
it was
Petersburg.
great.
So what
Yeah.
we're doing at Pen Parentis is to build actual authentic community among writers who are parents, parents of kids of any age, any kind of a family, and writers at any stage of their development. We have intro level, we have pro level, we have all access. Please come and check us out on penparentis.org and come back next month, because we do it live on the second Tuesday of every month, where you get to be in the comments. Hi, Helene, thanks for saying hi. And you can talk to us through the chat. But we also have our live cast is going to be on YouTube. So you can subscribe at youtube.com/penparentis and just watch them when it's live, or watch them in the playback after we edit them a little bit.
And you want me to mention what's coming up, Milda?
Yeah, let's go.
Great, because I just don't want people to lose that one. September 17th at 6
September
p.m.
9th. I think it's the 9th. It's the second Tuesday.
I just give it.
Well, whatever. It's the second Tuesday, whatever the second Tuesday is. What's the theme?
The person reading it's not on the 17th.
On September 17th?
Yeah.
Oh, on September 17th, we're going to Brooklyn Book Festival. Thank you for reminding me. We're doing an in-person event, you guys.
Right.
It's
Yes.
in-person.
That's what I'm talking
Fly to
about.
New York and land in New York, and then go to the event, which is at the Brooklyn Book Festival.
Lofty Books. Yes.
At Lofty
in
Books.
Brooklyn.
Yes, in Brooklyn. We have who?
With
Domenica
the
Rita?
magazine.
Yes. It's
It's
Ariel
Rachel
Gore.
Doyle, Ariel Gore,
Yeah. And Domenica Ruta.
Domenica
back.
Ruta.
We've had her
Yes.
twice.
And-
she is a great speaker. She's really good. And
Yes.
what? Sorry.
And then there's an October salon.
And then
correct?
there's an October
That's my
salon,
understanding.
which is accessible to people who are actually not flying into New York. You can just watch it online in your pajamas, and it's lovely. And that one is going to be really cool. It is Beauty and Violence Within Language.
Oh,
Ash Bainbridge. Ash is a non-binary nurse practitioner who is a poet and a parent. And Marcella Sulak, and she lives in Tel Aviv. And so she is, I think, zooming in from there. I'm not sure, but she might be in the States for this. She's a great poet. And Thaddeus Rutkowski is coming back. He is an experimental writer who writes usually very, very short things that are super like all over interesting. And we'll see what all three of them have to say about beauty and violence within language. Sorry to keep you all waiting, but thank you so much for staying, and thank you for coming. Jessica, Nicole, Catherine, thank you. Marina, thank you so much for co-hosting. You're amazing. And look, Alexander from out there in the internet world knows Thaddeus. So we do read the comments. Thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you, people who are watching the playback, for staying with us to the very end. We'll see you in October or in September at the Book Festival. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
bye.